wherever you are for this edition of B.E.P Talks. Well, hello, and welcome back to this edition of B.E.P Talks, where, as always, we bring you a fascinating guest who shares passions, beliefs, experiences, beliefs, experience, passions for B.E.P, and all in the great generous spirit to inspire, to motivate, to educate, and sometimes to entertain, but mostly to really share what it is in their heart, what they spend their life's work doing, and today is certainly no exception. Our very special guest today is Arnoush Javherian, and I'd like him to come on now. Arnoush, welcome.
Thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you. And it is our absolute pleasure to have you here today on B.E.P Talks. And I want to say that one of the reasons that I looked so forward to this was something that I read about you, when we're vetting our guests, that made so much sense to me, especially in today's day and age with all that's going on. And it sounds like a simple statement, but it's so practical. I absolutely love it. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, I guess, but you said surround yourself with people who want the best for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That sounds like, first of all, common sense, which I absolutely love. Great advice, which we can never get enough of. But as I said, in today's day and age, something that I think we're kind of missing, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But let me just tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about you, because you have so many wonderful credentials, including 15 years of experience, kind of in self-improvement, and what I love that you call character building.
Yes.
Something else that the world could use a whole lot more of these days. You are an educator, a coach, an entrepreneur, a motivational speaker. Here you are today. So thank you for all of the credentials that you bring to us. And I am very excited to share your message. So let me just ask you, character building, how do you define that?
Well, Beth, first off, I do want to say to start off with, I love B.E.P and what it stands for. I believe that everything you say, beliefs, experiences, passions, that's me in a nutshell. Like I think we were just meant to connect. I really do feel that way. And I want to commend you for what you're doing. I really do. I think it's just awesome. And people like myself, the one word that people use to describe me a lot of times is passionate. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about my life. I'm very passionate about my family. I'm just a passionate human being, and I can get that vibe, that definitely that vibe here as well. So I just want to commend you on that. Going back to your question, sorry. Can you repeat your question for me? Sorry, I just wanted to say all that.
Character building.
Yes.
How do you define that? What does that mean to you?
Sure. I've been talking about character building, like I said, for about 15 years now. And it's kind of slowly been an evolution process. And I remember when I first started out being an educator, I really wanted to make a difference in this world. And I just really wanted to help the people that I was interacting with on a daily basis to help them be a better person. And that was my whole goal. I grew up with this word integrity, and it was been really etched in my brain at a young age. And I thought, hey, if I can just do my part, try to help these individuals become better people, to try to improve their character, that would be my life's mission, my life's goal. And like I said, I think over the last several years, this has kind of evolved itself into that word character building. I'll never forget, I actually had a student one time come up to me, and they put together this amazing Google slide presentation of me, and they titled it character building. And I remember calling them out on it right away. I'm like, where did you get this term? Why did you pick this? And they said, Java, this is what you do with us. You help us build our character. This is all these sessions that we run with you, we're improving our character. We're doing character building. And boom, it was just dynamite. I mean, it really just like hit a home run for me. And I really owe it to my students for bringing that word, that concept into my life because I was doing it. I just didn't have the right terminology to do.
Let me interject something here right now. I love that you said, and I get your passion. I mean, you just exude it. You said you owe a lot to your students because they kind of coined that phrase. Let me put it this way, if I may. And I'm going to call you Java now because we're friends now. I know that's your nickname. So I'm going to call you Java, my new friend. What they did in coining that phrase was really pay it back to you, that by your example, what you were teaching them and what you were living in front of them screamed out character building. I mean, for students to come up with that, you came up with it. You sent them that message, but how wonderful that they gave that back to you. So it takes the two, the students and the teacher. And you know what they say, when you have a great teacher, eventually the student becomes the teacher, and it works hand in hand. You know, I am so interested in hearing when you're speaking on stage as a motivational speaker. Can I call on you now to share a bit of what you do when you're speaking, whether it's to your students, to your audience, to your tribe, whoever that might be? Could I ask you to spend some time talking to us about it?
It would be my pleasure. It would be my
honor. Well, our pleasure. So I'm going to bow out for a moment here now, and I'm going to say, without further ado, here is Arnoush Javherian.
Thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate it. And I want you to know I'm very humbled by the words that Beth said. I've always been one to say that I'm a work in progress. And I love what Beth said there because you should learn from each other. I always feel like whenever I do these keynotes, whenever I'm interacting or doing a workshop where I'm trying to do my character building workshops and trying to help people bring out the best versions of themselves, I learn too. I learn just as much as the people that are sitting in the seats hearing me. And I love those discussions and I love those conversations. So I really appreciate Beth for bringing that here. Yes, my road here has been ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster. And so what I've done in my life is I've learned to follow my own path in life. And that here is my keynote. That is one thing that I always want to try to get across to the people that hear my talks, people that hear me speak, because I think it is so important that you find your own path in life. And I've always said, the quote that I kind of live by every day is, life is a journey, not a destination. And God knows my life has been a journey. And I hope that you look at your life as a journey, not a destination, where you're like, okay, once I get to this one point where I have this and this and this, I'm content and I'm good. And maybe that is you. Maybe that is what you want. But I've always been the kind to be like, no, I can keep improving. I can keep working on myself. I can always be, as I like to say, a work in progress and continue to grow and learn. And so that's a question I always ask my audience right away is, do you know your path? And I think a lot of people do, but I think a lot of times, whether you are in your career for 1 year or 15 or 20 years, or whether you are just in college looking to see like, hey, what career am I going to go into? You're always at a place to be like, is this what I want to do? Am I happy? And you may be that person that's currently happy. I know that for me, when I was young, I had a very difficult time. And so taking you through my little journey in life, I actually moved here at a very young age from the Middle East. And I was quote unquote different. And yes, I went through times of adversity, times where people would pick on me. I remember I was a different kid. I looked different. I had bushier eyebrows, a bigger nose. And, of course, people could tell like, oh, he's not from here. And so where you're at a young age, you get made fun of a lot. And so really it took until high school for me to come out of my shell, because I was really, really shy before that. And there's nothing wrong with being shy. But what happened to me in high school is I learned to love who I was. And I learned to really appreciate who I was. And that is when, we're going to get in this, and that is when all of a sudden people around me started to accept who I am. And I loved who was around me because I was like, you know what, I'm just going to have people around me that truly accept who I am. And I really love me. And I realized like I don't need to change for anybody out there. And so that's my first lesson that I truly feel I learned in life is, to put it bluntly, you be you. Just always be yourself. Don't feel like you need to change or adapt to anybody. People should love you for who you are. You should never feel as though you need to change to fit this category, that category, or to fit in with this clique or that clique. People need to love you for who you are. Otherwise, it's their loss. And I can tell you right now, I've had people come in and out of my life, and people that have stayed in my life, they love me for who I am. And I'm so thankful that I learned that lesson very early. I also remember in high school, I had a teacher, and his name was Mr. Fieldhouse. And Mr. Fieldhouse was my chemistry teacher. And I'll never forget, it was senior year. We were on the front lawn. Comes over and he squats down right next to me. He goes, Arnoush, I got a question for you. And I said, okay, Mr. Fieldhouse, go ahead. He said, well, where do you think you're going to be in 15 years? Because me and the other teachers, we pretty much think we know where everyone else in your circle, which, by the way, I was in a circle with a bunch of student council friends, so a lot of teachers knew us. And we're like, oh, we know where they're all going to be in 15 years. You know, doctor, lawyer, you know, nurse, blah, blah, blah. And then we got to you and we couldn't figure it out. And I thought about myself. And I looked up at the sky and I thought about it. And I looked back at Mr. Fieldhouse and I was like, you know what, Mr. Fieldhouse? I have no idea where I'm going to be in 15 years. And now the truth, here I am, 18 years old, about to go off to college. And I was completely clueless about what I want to do. In fact, I went in my freshman year to the University of Illinois down in Champaign-Urbana. Great school, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Completely undecided. I was taking classes like Shakespeare and acting and geology in national parks. I was all over the board. And I was just experiencing. Right back to B.E.P, right? With that E, experiences. I was experiencing. I was trying this. I was trying that. I was trying this class. And eventually, I took this kinesiology class. And I'll never forget, I went in and I talked to my counselor. I was like, I love sports. I love exercise. Oh, you got to take a kinesiology class. And I did. And I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with kinesiology. So boom, there's my major. And then I had an opportunity to coach football. And I was like, you know, I've always wanted to coach. I think I could do this. I think I could be a coach. I think I can inspire youth. And so I took this job at Mohammed Seymour down in Illinois. And I loved it. I got there early. I left late. I just became an integral part of the program. And I was only 1 year in. And then next year I went out to Colorado to get my master's degree, and I started coaching out there, and I loved it. And then every summer I started going to camp. And I remember I went reluctantly. My brother convinced me to go, and I went. And I started being around kids, and I started making a difference. And I remember making a difference in this kid's life, and this kid's life. And I finally figured out what I want to do. And that was become an educator. And how did I figure that out? Because experiences matter. And that goes right back to, and that's why I love being on B.E.P. That goes right back to experiences with B.E.P. It's so true. I figured out what I want to do in life just by experiencing, just by going out there and trying things. And just so that you know, I also tried other things that I ended up not doing, which is just as important as figuring out doing things that you do want to do. For example, I remember going to athletic training my freshman year at U of I. And I went in and after about 2 or 3 months in the program, I was like, I don't think this is for me. And I approached the director and I told her, I said, yeah, I think I'm gonna drop out of the program. Now, I know that you guys are accepting people over the next couple of weeks, but I don't want to be part of that because I don't feel like it's my passion. And she was shocked. She was like, you're the number one person in our program. We want you the most. And I said, I'm not gonna do something that I'm not passionate about. And I figured that out by experiencing, because experiences matter. I also had 2 roommates in college, Scotty and Greg. And they were great. They were wonderful. My friends still till today. We were at each other's weddings. It was wonderful. And I remember Scotty would sit in front of the TV, watching Monday Night Football and studying for organic chemistry, one of the hardest classes you could ever take. And Greg would go into his room and he would just study there. He would stay in there for 4 or 5 hours straight in this little small little room in our apartment, because of course we're college kids. We don't have the biggest apartment hall. We got a small apartment. And that worked for them. I had to go bury myself in the library in the quietest corner possible with no noise. And I would stay there for 5, 6, 7 hours in a row studying. All 3 of us had 3 completely different ways to study. All three of us got great grades. But you know what I learned? You know, as a third character building skill that I learned as I'm going through this presentation for you guys is that I don't compare myself to others, and neither should you. It is a lose-lose situation. If I compared myself to Scotty or Greg and be like, hey, how do you study? Oh, you studying for the Monday Night Football. That's not going to work for me. If I fail out of college, I'd probably be back home. Oh, Greg, you go in your room, in your smaller room and stay there? Yeah, that would probably be pretty depressing for me. I couldn't do that. Everyone has their own way. And if you compare yourself to others, it is not going to work. It is a lose-lose. Do what is best for you and don't even think twice about it. I remember I had two friends also my senior year of high school. And I'll never forget, their name was Trisha and Steven. They were a year older than me. Then I went off to college. Now we're in my college years. And I remember Trisha contacted me and she said, Arnoush, I want to take you out to lunch at this Chili's there in Champaign, Illinois. And I want to interview you for my class. She's like, I got to do an interview on somebody that I respect. And I want to do you. And I was very humble at the time. I was like, sure, let's go. And I remember Trisha sat down with me and she asked me a bunch of questions, tons of questions. And of course, this was well over 20 years ago. Now it's about 25 years ago. And I remember that the last couple questions, especially the last question, she said, what do you want people to know about you? What is the most important thing? And I remember I went back to that word integrity. I said, I just want people to know that I'm a person of integrity, that I want to try to do the right thing. And she like shook her head and she goes, that's why I interviewed you. And I remember at the time I was driving home and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, that's such an important value of mine. And here I am, I believe I was like 19, 20 years old at the time. And I was like, yes, that's a really foundational core value of mine. And it really took until that interview to realize that. But that is what I learned in the next character building process I went through, is that I realized how important it is to know your values. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, what do you value in this world? Your values are your core. Your values will guide you in life. And that is why, if you look at my values, I can go ahead and read them off to you. Family. Family is the most important thing in my life, period. Integrity. I know I've hit on that a couple times. Experiences, traveling. We've already talked about that. Open-mindedness. I love that. That's so important to me. Humility. I love to be humble. I try to be as humble as I can. And I'm very attracted to other people that are humble. I find that I want them in my life. I want their friendship in my life. Hard work. I value that a lot. I value that so much. And I know that that's one of the reasons why I'm where I am today. And if you look at my values, and these values have guided me throughout life, it is no surprise that I'm an educator. It is no surprise that I'm a motivational speaker. It is no surprise that I married my beautiful wife, Michelle, that I did. I bet you, and we've done this before, if she laid out her values right next to mine, you would see that we're not that much different. We really aren't. Of course, we have some differences, but not really. Like if I look at her values and she looks at mine, we're all like, you know what? I value those things too. It's no surprise that I married somebody, and the most important in my life shares the same values I do. And it's led me to my spouse, my career. Do you know your values? I then graduated and I went off to find a job after Colorado, and I landed a job in Milwaukee. And here I am, I landed a job in Milwaukee as a director of education at a massage therapy school. Whoa, random. Never thought in a million years that's what I'd do. But here I am, and I have this job in Milwaukee, and I'm doing this job, and it's really just the first job that came my way, and really the only job at the time. I was young, and I was inexperienced as can be, and I took it, and I moved to Milwaukee, and I never really been to Milwaukee. I never really visited Milwaukee. My parents, and I only lived about 2 hours away, but honestly, we never went. And so I moved to the city, and I was like, okay, I'll try this out. And I remember 2 years in, I remember waking up one morning, and I did not like my life. I did not like where I was. I didn't like my job. I didn't like living in Milwaukee. I know a lot of people do, and God knows I respect that, but it just wasn't for me. And so my adversity, I was dealing with adversity. I was absolutely dealing with adversity because I woke up and I was completely in a rut. And that one quote that I love to say is, adversity is like a strong wind. It tears away from us all but the things that cannot be torn, so that afterward we see ourselves for who we really are. And when I woke up that morning, depressed and thinking like, oh my God, this is not where I want to be in life, I had a choice to make because here I was dealing with adversity. What am I going to do? Because my character was being tested right then. Am I just going to continue to move on with life and just be like, okay, it is what it is. This is where my life is. Or was I going to do something about it? Was I going to step up and do something about it? Because I am determined now. And this is one thing I learned. Use adversity as motivation. Use it as motivation. So here I am living in Milwaukee and I'm making pretty good money and everything. But you know what? As I said, I'm not happy. So I knew I had to make a change. My character was being tested by this adversity. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to go back to school. And I applied to one school, University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I got in. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going back to school. I'm giving up, salary. I'm giving up everything. I'm going to go back to school for who knows, 2 to 3 years to try to get this teaching license because I know I want to be a teacher. I know it's my calling, but oh my God, like this is like such a big step back. And so what I was doing with that time, which is the next character building step I went through, is this fear of failure. This fear of failure, because here I am, like I'm making money. I'm doing okay. Am I happy? Not really. But you know what? I'm stable. Isn't that what matters? Like, what if I take a step back and what if I fail? What if things don't go right? What if I don't get a job teaching? What if I don't make money? All these what ifs run through your head. The fear of failure. And the question that I've always been asked is, what would you do if you knew you would not fail? Well, if I knew that would be where I'm at today, like, oh man, I would have dumped that job in Milwaukee and gone to Madison in a heartbeat and just done it and been like, oh, I'll be fine. But come on, we're human. We're human. And of course, we get tested. Our character gets tested. And I was like, you know what? I got to take this step forward. Many people do not follow their passion because they're so worried about failing. But I knew at that time, I'm like, no, I got to take this risk. I got to take this step forward. So I did. I went back to school at Madison, and it was the best decision I made. I remember at the time I was going through science classes, and, being that I was from the Middle East and my culture and everything, I felt this pressure though. Even when I went back to school, like, hey, you know what? I don't think you should become a teacher now that you're back at school. Why don't you go to med school? And I did. I had uncles and I had aunts telling me I should go. And I remember like my dad got a call from his brother, my uncle, saying, I think Arnoush is making a terrible mistake. He needs to go become a doctor, not a teacher. And they would tell my dad this. And my dad would, of course, relate to me, but God bless my dad. God bless him. He goes, no, you keep going. But here's the one thing I'll never forget. I told two of my friends. I told my friends, Rich and Reagan, who at the time were a couple and they were about to get married. And they called me up each individually. And when I went to a med school info night, and they called me up individually and said, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What's going on? Like, stop it. Like, they were like yelling at me over the phone. They were like, that's not what you want to do. You know that you have a calling to be a teacher. And they were like drilling me, like, but it was all because they loved me, because they knew that I was being pressured by these outside influences that were not me, that did not have the best interests of me. And so this goes back to what Beth said at the very beginning of our talk. And it is so important who you surround yourself with. Rich and Reagan, my two best friends, they called me up and they knew me. They knew me so well. And they're like, no, don't listen to them. Forget about the money. Forget about this. Forget about that. Follow your calling. Follow your passion. Go back to school and become a teacher. And I did. And it was the best decision I have ever made. I am one of the happiest people you will ever meet in your life. And that's because I did, in the end, as my keynote says, I followed my own path. And I don't think I would be here today if I did not surround myself with people that have the best interest in me. It is so important who you surround yourself with. And then I got a job as a teacher. And it was amazing. I remember my first class. And so the question always gets asked is, what does success mean to you? And what I've learned is that you define what success means to you. And that was the next character building thing that I've learned. And my character is so much better now because I've learned that I determine success. I define success. Nobody else does. Success means different things to people. Some people look at money. Some people look at your position. I look at happiness. I look at happiness and I look and say, hey, when I wake up in the morning, am I excited to go to work? And I can say 17 years into the education world, absolutely. I teach at the college level. I teach at the high school level. I am motivational speaking. I can tell you right now that I am living my life stream. And that is because I define what success is. And after that, as that said, I became an entrepreneur. I started running ultimate Frisbee camps. I started running ultimate Frisbee organizations, and these became huge, the biggest in the nation. And I remember there was one guy I hired, the biggest name in ultimate, Brody Smith. And I remember the time he told me, he goes, haters will be haters. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what does that mean, haters will be haters? Like, I know I'm saying it, but I learned after I became more and more successful with those entrepreneur companies that I built from nothing, is that people knock you down to make themselves feel better. People project their insecurities onto you, is what I've learned. And that's what I've learned. It's about people's insecurities. I tried so hard to know and be self-aware of my insecurities. But as you become more successful, you will have more and more haters. And so you need to be self-aware of your insecurities, know about them, and know that others will do anything to knock you down to make themselves feel better because they are not self-aware of their insecurities. Be strong. Be strong. My family and I, we've had a great life. And I can tell you right now that my 20s, I explored who I am today. I explored my values. My 30s, I applied those values and what I learned through my 20s. And I can say right now, my 40s, I am cementing who I am. And through all that, what I've learned, and the last thing I want to leave with you is self-awareness. Self-awareness is key to understanding and growing as a person. It is the ability to focus on yourself and how your actions, thoughts, or emotions do or do not line with your values. Self-awareness is the greatest agent of change. If you are self-aware of yourself, then you can change, and you can change in a positive way. I will say it all the time, I am a work in progress. But I'm a work in progress because I'm self-aware to realize, hey, I don't like this, or I do like this. This is something I'm doing that I don't like. This is something that's happening that I do like. And you need to take a step back and do that. I remember when I was young, and my dad once called me stubborn. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not stubborn at all. I am so stubborn. What was I saying? I was not self-aware at all. But now, yes, I can be stubborn. And so now that I'm self-aware of it, I can stop that. I can take a step back and say, you know what? I'm being stubborn. Take a step back. And through all that, that's my journey. And I will always be a work in progress. But I am so thankful that I followed my own path of life. And I hope you create yours. Thank you so much.
Oh, Armo, you are such a natural educator, and you're so passionate about what you do. The perfect guest on B.E.P Talks. Beliefs, experiences, and passions. I took so many notes, and I wanted to jump in so many times, but you were on such a roll. Surround yourself with those who want the best for you. I know I read about you, and it touched my heart because I felt the same in my life, that your inspiration was your dad, and you brought him up as you were speaking. And my dad and my mom certainly, but from a business and entrepreneurial perspective, my dad was my mentor. My mother was my cheerleader. My dad thought there was nothing I couldn't do, and my mother thought I deserved it. And that was a great balance. My dad said, you are only as good as the company you keep.
Yes.
So surround yourself with great people.
Yep.
And in doing that, when you get to choose, doesn't it naturally help you to really become your most authentic self when you're living, I'll say in harmony? You use the word happiness, in harmony with the people that you choose to spend your time with.
Yes, absolutely, Beth. And I think that you use a word that's very important there, and you chose the word choose. You choose the people that you hang out with, and it's very true. And so I will tell you right now that I absolutely believe that that choice that you make to hang out with this person, or surround yourself with this people or that people, that's your decision. And you can choose to have them in your life, or you can choose not to. And that's one thing that you learn as you get older. And again, through character building, you learn that I don't have to have these people. And I remember when I was younger, I felt I did. I remember having a group of friends, and I remember they would knock me down all the time, and I would be the butt of their jokes all the time. And then as I got older, I remember in my late 20s, I was like, I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't need this. I really don't need this. And you know what? If I don't have them in my life, I'll be just fine. And I
Right.
was. So you're absolutely right.
But that's part of, I think, the natural course of maturation is that you have to kind of come into your own. And, we say, women say, you kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince. I kind of thought of that.
Right.
But so many things that you said. And when you're teaching high school students, that is such a pivotal time in their lives where they still can be so easily influenced in either direction, in all directions, until they find themselves. Education and what's going on, not getting political or anything, but what is it? Where are the youth today? You deal with them all the time. Are they trying to blend in and just be part of the crowd, or are they trying to stand out from the crowd?
I think it's a mixed bag. And I think being an educator, you can definitely see the students that want to grow. They want to grow as a person. They want to expand their horizons. They want to open up their minds. And then you see others that are, lack of a better term, content, or they're, as you said, blending in. And they're not really challenging themselves. And I think that's a good way to put things. There's one student that comes to mind right off the top of my head. She always looks for ways to challenge herself. And she's always doing new things, trying new things, experiencing new things. And what's interesting too, Beth, that you bring this up, is that it shows in the person that they are. Like when you talk to her, she's a fascinating person, and I want to talk more to her because everything she says to me, I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm gravitated towards her. I find myself wanting to have those discussions with this awesome person, this awesome human being that's experienced so much. And then there's others that you meet that you can tell they're just kind of like going about their day. They're just kind of like going through life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to be very clear. There's nothing wrong with that. But yes, you definitely have the two mixed bags. And I think one of the biggest motivating factors behind that is the way that they were raised and the way the parents and the influence they have on them, as well as the surrounding, the people they surround themselves with. I think that has a big influence.
Right. And be yourself. Don't compare yourself to anyone. I have to, it's been a long time since I was a teenager, and I went to a school and was, in a group. I never was bullied. I stood out as a leader in sports, in not so much academics, but in all the extracurricular stuff. And I didn't compare myself to anybody, but I saw that others did. And I thought that that was a natural thing. You would look up to certain people that you may have admired and say, I want to be like that person. I want to do what that person is doing. Is there a danger in that? Because I'm thinking of the words, to thine own self be true. But don't you have to kind of live life a little bit to, as you said, you're the perfect example, to know. You find out what you want to do by crossing off the things that you don't want to do. You didn't want to be a doctor. You had to cross that off your list to go back to wanting to, or not wanting, go back to wanting to be, but to honoring what you knew you were called to do, what you truly have the passion for, to be a teacher and a coach.
Yeah, and I think that what you're hearing, Beth, I think a lot of it has to do with experiences. I know that that's one of the terms that you always hit on.
Yeah.
I mean, right in Beth. I mean, it's right in.
Right.
And I love that. You have to experience, and you have to experience a lot. And so I think that that's important because that's how you figure out what you do and don't like. And as I've always said, sometimes experience something and realizing you don't like it is just as important, if not even more important, than doing something and realizing that you do like it.
Right.
And with that said, though, I think you also need the right backing to feel like you can take that leap of faith and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to go this route. I want to go this route. And I'm very fortunate that my dad and mom, for the most part, I will tell you that there were times my mom was like, oh no, you should definitely become a doctor. Because of course her and the culture that we come from, you know, being from the Middle East and stuff like that. Like, you know, it's very, you know, we're Persian. And so it's very common in that culture. But in the end, my dad, God bless his soul, God rest his soul, he always said, he's like, I just want you to be happy.
Be
And
happy.
so I was very thankful I had it like that, because I can tell you right now, that's hard if you don't have that backing. And I can definitely see that. And I see that in a lot of students, whether they be college age, older, because you know, in the college I teach, I sometimes have people in their 30s and 40s come 30s, you know, as well as high school age. I can see it across the board.
Absolutely. And the experience, you have to have some distance in the rearview mirror to accumulate that experience. And when you combine that experience, that life experience, with what you learn in the books and what have you, that creates the wisdom, so that as we get older, hopefully we have the wisdom to share it with the young people, which clearly you do. You know, something that fascinates me, because I've spoken to people about this, the fear of failure. So it's kind of safe not to, you know, dive off the high board, you know, for fear of, you know, belly flopping, or the water's too cold, or making a fool out of yourself, or whatever. But if you don't do it, you never will know. Isn't there also a fear of success in some ways?
You make a very good point. You really, really do. And I think that I think that's something maybe I should even talk more about. Now that you bring it up, but I definitely think you're right. I think that there is a fear of success. I think that people wonder, hey, what if I become too successful? What if I do make it? What if I, you know, because then it's almost like you're having to, you're gonna have to do this. Like, you're gonna have to do this full go. And like, this is, and it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna take hard work, and it's gonna take time. And that's why I always say you should always do something that you're passionate about.
Right.
Because when you do something you're passionate about, you will absolutely become successful at it. And that's, I know I just had that conversation with my daughter, and she, God knows she's only 6, but like, I want to start off early, but it's so true, because you are going to be faced with challenges as you go. And especially if you become successful, and especially because once you become successful, like, you're going to have to keep going. You're going to keep going.
Like, there's responsibility with that.
Right. So
and I guess if you feel you've reached the top, now you feel, well, now I'm going to fail anyway. So why even try? It's such a battle. But I think there's nothing like success. I had a great quote I read this week. I'm trying to remember who said it. Maybe was it Edison who said, I never failed. I just figured out 14,000 ways that something wouldn't work. And I thought, boy, is that wisdom. I didn't fail. I just figured out what wouldn't work and got closer than to what would.
And how do you ever learn if you don't fail? I mean, failure is one of the biggest learning tools that we'll ever have in life. And so, like, again, my 6-year-old daughter, she's just 6. Whenever she makes a mistake, I'm like, I clap. I get all excited as her dad. I'm like, great, here we go. And I know clear as day, being, you know, after having all this experience I had, that she's going to learn more from when she fails than when she succeeds.
Fail forward, right? Fail forward. Yeah. Yeah. I can talk to you forever. One other thing that I wanted to mention, when you said you felt like you were in a rut, and I thought, and you were talking about your values. And do we get into a rut sometimes because our behaviors are not honoring our values, and we need to make kind of adjustments?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, kinesiology, so how the body works, how the mind works, the energy, the flow. And
no, when I was in Milwaukee and I was in a rut, I wasn't doing what I was passionate about. I wasn't following I wasn't determining my path. I was kind of like meandering and trying to figure things out. And that's fine, because I was only 24 at the time. You know, like, you're supposed to figure things out at 24. I've always told my wife, I'm like, I hope our children don't land what they really want to do until like 28, 29, 30, because the middle of your 20s, you're still figuring out who you are, what you love, what you value. And so I absolutely think there's this meandering time that we all go through. I know that a lot of times you hear the term quarter life crisis, which is like around the age of 25, 26. People will get a job. They have a job a couple of years out of college. And all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 years, and they're like, what the heck am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And that's because they haven't, you're right, I think that, like, and this goes back to, character building points I made on my keynote, is that they haven't followed their true passions. They haven't followed their values.
Right.
The values.
And that goes back to what I was
tied-
saying. Are they trying to follow the crowd? Are they trying to
Absolutely.
please somebody else? And when you think about it, here in the United States, especially, when our high school age students are making a decision about where they want to go to school and declare a major, you're 18 years old. You haven't experienced much of life.
Yeah.
Although you've been exposed to a lot of information with technology. So you're reading it. That's not really experiencing it, but it certainly becomes an influence. So when you said that your teacher, I think you said his name was, what did you say his name was? Your chem teacher, Mr. Fieldhouse.
Yeah.
When he said that the teachers all thought they could predict where the students were going to be down the road, I found that very interesting, because I look back and I know so many people who are doing something in life that they're good at, that they're passionate about, that they are, by our agreement of definition, successful at, and they're happy doing it. That has nothing to do with what they studied in college.
Absolutely. I've always said, and I always said that, like, I don't think that college aligns with when people have to make a decision for their career, for their life. I always said that. I think that college should be more of an experience. And, like, you get great education out of it. Don't get me wrong. But I don't want my daughters, and I'm going to talk about my daughters because those are the people I'm going to have direct influence over. I don't want my daughters to ever go into college thinking, like, oh, I better find the career that I'm going to do for the rest of my life during these 4 years of college. Like, no, like, that's not. Gain experience, try something out, see if you like it, know that you can change it, know you can go back to school. You're not supposed to figure things out at 18. Absolutely.
No. You are such a fascinating fellow, my friend Java, and I can talk to you forever and ever. And I think we should get back together and talk again on B.E.P Talks and bring another phase of character development. You used a word, and I gotta let you.
I have more keynotes, so let me know.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll do that. One word that you use that I love, that I think people misunderstand, but I just want to make a comment about it. You truly are a humble soul. And you mentioned humility. And I think a lot of people don't understand what humility truly is. And part of it is really being honest and truthful with yourself and accepting who you are. It's not about being self-effacing or anything. But what I'd like to do is let viewers and listeners know how they can reach out and be in touch with you. And all they have to do is go to this link and connect with you and find out the courses you're doing, where you're speaking, the coaching that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Not judging anyone. We all can use some additional character building, and it should be a constant work in progress. Lifelong learners. I think that makes it so much more interesting, and it helps us bring more value to those, our legacy, you as a dad. I thank you so much for being a very, very, very special guest on B.E.P Talks, and I encourage everyone to please go to this link and learn more about this man and how he can help you probably learn more about yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's what
Podcast,
character build. Website,
motivational talks, workshops, we can do it all. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. That's what it is. So I thank you again. And as we always say on B.E.P Talks, it is about beliefs, experience, and passions. Live them, share them, bring the value to other people. And to be a guest on B.E.P Talks, just go to beptalks.com. All the information is there. And until we talk again, as we always say at B.E.P Talks, may the best always be yet to come. And I thank you for sharing your time, your values, your beliefs, your experience, and your passions. And Arnoush, my friend Java, God bless. I wish you and yours nothing but the very best.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate for having me on. Thank you again.
It's been a pleasure and an honor. God bless. Thank you so much. Bye for now.